Now on Indianapolis This Week, political bombshell. Glenda Ritz decides to enter campaign for governor. The race for mayor of Indianapolis, a Sunday morning exclusive, as we go one-on-one with Republican candidate Chuck Brewer, including his plan to address food deserts in the city. Plus, fallout from the Planned Parenthood controversy. Joe Donnelly's vote to defund the organization as Planned Parenthood's Indiana leader joins us to talk about the organization's future.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. You can join us right now on Twitter, our handle at Indy This Week. We start with that bombshell announcement in the race for governor. Glenda Ritz dropping out of the race and deciding to seek a second term as superintendent of public instruction. She revealed that decision late Friday after a 2-month campaign which struggled to get off the ground. Ritz raised only about $30,000 in the first month after announcing. And then, as we first reported, her initial campaign finance report was riddled with errors. That filing revealed potential violations of state law by accepting contributions during the legislative session. In a statement making her announcement, Ritz says, "Now is not the right time for me to run for governor. Under my leadership, I have brought the discussion of public education into the public discourse and have started to fundamentally change how we support schools. My work is not finished and my passion is stronger than ever. I am resolutely dedicated to educators, students, families from pre-K to graduation." Now, this statement from Democrat frontrunner John Gregg. Glenda Ritz has always put the best interests of our school children first, and this decision is just another example of that. I look forward to supporting her re-election to the office of superintendent and to working with her as governor to further strengthen public education in our state. Joining us now, Abdul Hakim Shabazz with IndyPolitics.org on vacation in Tennessee. Welcome to the program. What does this mean for the 2016 campaign?
Well, actually, I would argue in a weird way, Raphael, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Glenda Ritz never really got her campaign out of the gate. We had the lackluster announcement, not as sparse crowds, abysmal fundraising. Then we had the complaint filed with the election board, and now this. I mean, she didn't even have enough money. My sources told me to get a room at a big Democratic function in French Lick in a couple of weeks. Glenda Ritz was one Keystone Cops political mistake after another, after another. I mean, after another.
Abdul, thank you. Now to our Sunday morning exclusive with Indy Republican mayoral candidate Chuck Brewer. Brewer announcing in the past week his plan to deal with food deserts in the city, an issue which exploded to the forefront after the closings of the Double 8 food stores in Indianapolis. Joining us now on the program is the Republican mayoral candidate Chuck Brewer. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
The big issue now facing many of our poorest neighborhoods in Indianapolis is this issue of food deserts. What is your plan to attract more grocery stores? And you do have a plan, which is similar to what we did to bring in sports arenas to downtown Indianapolis.
Yeah, so what we've got is a real crisis. I mean, with Double 8 Foods, a very small grocery retailer, leaves many of the neighborhoods for business reasons, and it creates a vacuum. And the only place for many families to get good groceries, if there are any, is how close they can walk to the nearest convenience store or gas station, and that's just not sustainable. I came up with this idea where we've got this economic model that seems to work downtown for sports arenas, convention centers, where we capture the taxes on those particular parcels. If we can do that downtown for sports arenas, why can't we do that in the neighborhoods we need it the most in, where we can attract retailers for grocery options?
It would take the legislature to allow you to create these zones. Will it take a lot of Jim Merritt, Senator Merritt, has said, good idea, but will the rest of the legislature follow on something like this?
Well, this is a crisis, right? And for certain neighborhoods, this is the top priority for them. I think it's important for us to start conversations around ideas that are already working and then go from there. Yes, this idea uses an existing model, but my goal is to get something done here and to create a solution. I want to limit this just to grocery retailers. I'm not looking to expand the scope because I need to get something done here for these neighborhoods, and I think this is a viable tool.
Your Envision Indy plan has 4 spokes to it.
Yeah.
Livability, opportunity, public safety. Is public safety the #1 priority for you?
Well, public safety is certainly at the forefront of most people's minds, but depending on the neighborhood that you go to, that focus could be public safety, it could be education, could be jobs and availability of employment. But for the most part, public safety tends to lead the headlines for us here in Indianapolis, yeah.
And what do you see the priority in that area? Is it staffing? Is it returning to community policing? When Mayor Ballard won his first term, he said the first thing he was going to focus on was public safety. Are you making the same commitment? Or would you make the same commitment?
Well, it's hard to be a successful mayor and just be a one-trick pony and just have public safety as your strong suit. I'm focused on public safety, yes, but I'm also focused on all the other problems that we have going on in Indianapolis. We've made a lot of progress, but there are other things we can improve on. I love the idea of adding more officers. And I think we talk about that a lot. That's important, and I will commit to the plan that we've already engaged with, and probably add more. But I have to tell you, this isn't just about more officers. This is about using the officers that we do have more efficiently. And that's why I love the idea of us starting to use data and analytics more effectively in public safety. And I think that we're going to have a lot of opportunity to build on that.
On the education front, you would like to appoint 2 members to the IPS school board, a Republican and a Democrat, to IPS. Why not the other township and other city schools? Why only IPS? And why not add more than 2? That way you can be more accountable for the actions on those boards.
Right. Well, there's a couple of reasons here. Number one, I'm interested in focusing on IPS first because IPS and Indianapolis both share the brand name of Indianapolis. I think we have to prove that we can be a value add to a large school district first before we start talking to other school districts about this. I wanted to show IPS, the school board, and all the members there and all the educators that the city can help them. They're doing great work from a reforming standpoint, from changing things from the inside out, and they're doing some really good work. I'm a big fan of Dr. Farabee. I want to help. I want to put the assets and the resources of the city on the board so that if they need anything from a public safety standpoint around schools, from a public works around schools, they are right there on the school board sitting there. And I thought it was important to have a Republican and Democrat to make this not political and keep it simple.
Little lightning round here. Would you still support the Vision Fleet contract? Would you, in your administration, would you re-sign up that contract?
So the city's core competency is not managing fleet and vehicles. I think it's important to come up with ideas to be able to reduce the expenses of a city. Overall, it's a great idea, right, for managing expenses. How we get to agreeing on the terms of those types of ideas towards fleet management is important, and that's really the friction right here.
Chuck Brewer, thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Come back anytime.
All right.
Thank you. Coming up, the huge controversy surrounding Planned Parenthood over those secretly recorded videos and the push to strip the agency of government funding. The head of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky joins us exclusively next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we turn our attention now to the controversy surrounding Planned Parenthood. First, the push to defund that group. An effort to strip Planned Parenthood of its federal dollars failed on Monday in the U.S. Senate. But both Indiana senators voted in favor of cutting off those dollars, including Democrat Joe Donnelly, who did not announce how he planned to vote until it was cast on the Senate floor. Now, Donnelly released a statement to Indianapolis This Week saying in part, "I cannot in good faith support federal funding for this organization until the questions of whether other clinics are complying with federal and state laws are answered." So the senator's full statement is posted on our Twitter account. And then Wednesday, we broke the news that former Lieutenant Governor Kathy Davis was stepping down from her role as treasurer in Donnelly's campaign, citing his vote on Planned Parenthood as the reason. Joining us now is the CEO and the president of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky, Betty Cockrum. Welcome to the program. First question, your reaction to Senator Donnelly's vote to defund Planned Parenthood in light of the fact that a state investigation by the Department of Health found that all of your centers were in compliance.
And of course, we know the senator knew that, so I'm very disappointed in his vote, but frankly not surprised. It's consistent with a vote he took with former Congressman Pence and now Governor Pence in 2011 to do the same thing.
There's a lot of talk that other community centers could do the work that you do.
That's always an argument that gets made, and it's a bad argument. We are 49th in the country in terms of providing access to basic fundamental reproductive health care, and we're a very big part of that provider network. We are nearly 1/3 of the patients who are served by Title X funding.
So is it possible to shift all the money that you receive to help all of these women to other centers in Indiana? I mean, do these centers exist?
The short answer is no, and to the extent that one might argue that that can be put into place, the infrastructure doesn't exist. It would take time if providers chose to get into that, but they aren't necessarily going to want to get into Title X funding, all the federal regulations that go with it, and they may not be accessible to the low-income people who most need that service.
Now there's also talk about even a government shutdown in an effort to remove the funding from you.
We have reason to believe that there are members of Congress whose intent when they come back from recess is to do exactly that.
And so then how do you then work under this? Are you under siege, or how do you perceive what is happening in Congress and what is happening in the state?
I think it's fair to describe it as being under siege, and it's a daily relentless effort, and it's certainly a focused one at this point. And you know, one has to believe that it's politically motivated. It certainly isn't in the best interest of the people across this country who are served by Planned Parenthood.
What triggered a lot of this talk were those videos, and I know you have some questions about how they were done, but they really have begun the discussion about this. What did you make of the videos?
The videos are very unfortunate. They play a game of gotcha. It's done by subterfuge, and it's something that's causing quite a distraction, getting a lot of attention, and hopefully will give us opportunity to engage in some dialogue that needs to occur. There's no question that tissue donation has made a great contribution to the advances of medicine and keeping people alive in this country.
So then how do we have that discussion? Because I think the issue is with the tissue donation. Is there a place, and what is that tone of the discussion that needs to happen on that issue?
It needs to be more fact-based, more evidence-based. It needs to be about why does this occur, who's in it. Universities are a huge part of that undertaking, and that makes a great deal of sense.
Do you foresee it just coming to an end? I mean, the outrage of that sort of donations that are sort of raise all the specter, should it just come to an end so that we can move on the discussion? Or do you think that is something that has to continue?
Has to continue. Of course, I hope that it could come to an end, and if nothing else, we could all agree that access to education is important here, but certainly access to birth control so that persons can plan their pregnancies. We all share a wish for abortion incidents to continue to go down. It goes down because of education and awareness and avoiding unintended pregnancy.
You're kind of tired of the hostility because you really believe that you're offering a lot of good services to a lot of women.
I'm certain we are offering a lot of good services to women and to men, and they are women and men who are most in need.
What is the one thing, or what are the many things that people don't understand about Planned Parenthood? As you sit here today, because you do a lot of work with thousands of people, what is the biggest misunderstanding or the biggest misconception about Planned Parenthood?
Obvious answer here, the biggest misconception is that what we do is provide abortions, and that is part of our work. It's critically important that women are able to avail themselves of safe abortions in this country, and we frequently say, a long time ago there was a quote that abortions didn't start to occur with Roe v. Wade 42 years ago. Women stopped dying of them, and so that's part of our work. But what's more important is to understand the preventive work. Pap tests have come such a long way to reduce the incidence of cervical cancer across this country, STD testing and treatment, and again, birth control. Birth control so that women and men can plan their children.
Betty Cochran, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As this debate continues, I hope you'll come back and you'll join us for more discussions.
Just invite me, and thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Take care.
Coming up, the first presidential debate is now in the books. So what did we learn? And who had the best night? Our political insiders are ready to answer those questions next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we welcome in our political insiders, Democrat Dan Parker and Republican Pete Seat. Let's jump right into the big story of the week, of course, that being the Republican presidential debate. The top 10 Republican presidential candidates all on stage in Cleveland for that first debate of this presidential campaign. All the talk leading into the night focused on him, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, who won the night?
Well, I think the candidates landed in three distinct categories. You had the buy candidates, where their stock rose. You had the hold candidates and the sell fast candidates. The buys were Rubio and Kasich. I think they both had impressive performances. The holds were Bush and Walker. Both were playing the role of the cautious front runner, and they didn't want to have a mistake. And the sell fast would be Rand Paul and Donald Trump. They both had very poor performances last night.
Dan Parker, who will your party fear out of those 10?
Well, the big winner of the night was Hillary Clinton. After watching that, there is a distinct difference. But I actually probably wouldn't disagree with Pete too much on his analysis. I mean, from a pure political operative perspective, Thursday night was very good for the governor from Ohio. I think he had the best performance. Rubio next. I thought he diminished himself a little bit with this sort of throwaway line at the end, you know, trying to get a jab in. I was unimpressed with Jeb Bush, but I completely agree with Pete that Rand Paul and Donald Trump were a pure disaster.
Did Donald Trump give the Democrats more ammunition on this whole issue of the war on women when he sort of chastised one of the moderators and went on this ranting rage about women? Was that a bad thing for the party?
Well, there's a case to be made that his entire campaign is an in-kind contribution to Hillary Clinton, and he's far gone over the FEC limits by now on that. But you know, I was of the belief that he had a lot to lose Thursday night. A lot of people said he had nothing to lose. I think he had a lot to lose, and it ended up happening from that very first question when he refused to say he wouldn't run as an independent if he didn't get the GOP nomination. He lost a lot of that crowd. You heard those boos, and we finally got to hear that not every Republican supports Donald Trump.
But Donald Trump is not speaking to the people that were in that crowd. That crowd was a bunch of establishment folks. That's not where his support is. I think the thing that Republicans have to fear about Donald Trump is that he actually goes through and runs as an independent. It's almost like he's holding the entire party hostage to what he wants. The question is, what does he want?
Yeah, the next big issue, of course, Joe Donnelly voted to defund Planned Parenthood. He lost his campaign treasurer, former Lieutenant Governor Kathy Davis, over that vote. Will there be more fallout from his vote in the Senate?
No. There won't. This is what people voted for in 2012. People knew that Joe Donnelly was he was a man of faith. He wore it up proudly that he was a pro-life Catholic Democrat in 2012. He's middle of the road. And this was a vote of conscience for him. But he also knows that this is an issue that was very personal and an issue of conscience for those that disagreed with him. So he and Kathy spoke, very cordial. But this is who Joe Donnelly is, and this is the man that Hoosiers...
But didn't Kathy know that before she joined the campaign?
Well, I mean, she should have. I mean, this was the same exact position that he voted in 2011 when he was a member of the House. This same issue came up in 2011. So this is what people voted for in 2012, and that's what they're getting with Joe Donnelly.
I would agree. It's no surprise that Joe Donnelly voted this way. It was the right vote, and it's no surprise that Kathy Davis is opposed to it. She has been on the record as far back as 2012, and the IBJ wrote about the issue of Planned Parenthood and Planned Parenthood funding. But what's interesting about this particular legislation is the money would have been taken away from Planned Parenthood, which has plenty of money to do their women's health services, but it would have gone to other women's health programs. It wouldn't have evaporated into thin air. So some people are making this purely about Planned Parenthood and not what it should be about, and that's women's health.
The governor is now calling for an ethics investigation of a former BMV chief of staff, Sean Walters, after it was learned that he became the CEO of a company for which he approved a contract while working at the BMV. He says he took that job beyond the one-year cooling off period. What does the legislature have to do with the BMV? It seems that every administration has to deal with a BMV scandal. We have a minute left.
Well, I mean, this is a much larger issue. There is a culture of corruption and sort of lack of someone being in charge at the State House, whether it's the legislature or whether it's in the administration. I mean, there is a revolving door of people taking, I mean, waivers are just being granted. This one, in this case, there wasn't even a waiver. I mean, there is a serious problem. The governor says he wants transparency. Put it all out there. I mean, and let's have a real
You get the last word.
Inspector General.
I have to laugh at culture of corruption. How many Democrats found themselves indicted and in jail because of what they've done at the ballot box not that long ago, Dan? But with the BMV,
at the State House, you've been in charge the last almost 16 years, brother.
Talk to him. Don't talk to me.
Well, it's sad to see the BMV, which was able to increase efficiency and performance, struggle yet again with these allegations.
We'll see what happens. The conversation between our insiders continues right now on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion and stay up to date with our entire team throughout the week. And make sure you follow our official Twitter account, the handle Indy This Week, to continue the debate today and stay on top of all political news and happenings 24/7.